Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to this Thursday night Quantum Woo episode with, of course, Maryam Hennein. You can find her work at Maryam Hennein here on YouTube and also at honeycolony.com. Let's give my co-host a big, warm welcome back to the show. Maryam, welcome back.
Yay, I'm happy to be here and to see you, Jean-Claude. Hello.
Excited to have you as well. And folks, please welcome a brand new guest to our show tonight. Her name is Lindseys Boardcraft. You can find her work at rogueways.org and also here at Rockvian at Rogueways. Oh my God, it's late. Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm going to be stumbling as much as you with how things have been going today, but it's so great to be here. I'm really grateful, and thank you for having me with your awesome audience here, and you both. It's so good to be here.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. And of course, we are in a Mercury retrograde, and I am French, and I've been doing a lot of shows lately, so yeah. My universal translator is on the fritz. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us here tonight on this live interactive show. We'll be taking your comments as we go along, and if we have time, we'll try to get some questions in later on the second part of the show. But before we start the show, Maryam, you haven't been on since the month of December. Let the audience know what you've been up to. You look absolutely amazing and stunning and energetic and somewhat viral, may I say. What's going on, Maryam?
Thank you. I actually have it's called a cold, and I've lost my sense of taste and smell in the past day, coincidentally, as they've turned on Cinco Geo. So that's very trippy to not taste and to not be able to smell. But I'm doing a flurry of things. So yeah, since I last saw you, I have put together a protocol against the Jabolas, and that was supposed to be 15 pages and then turned into 100 pages. And I go in to explain how they work inside the body, and then that's going to probably come up on Dr. Sherry Tenpenny's site. And now I'm back to working on my book on George Floyd and the documentary, just so people know that the federal trial started today for the 3 officers. That's the federal trial. The state trial, which was supposed to start in March, has been pushed to June, which allows me more time to finish my book. And at the same time, the exhibits of the original Derek Chauvin trial were just announced today to be released, a whole bunch of exhibits. So I was just writing to the publicity person before, and I'm in Miami, and I'm still looking for a place to live. It's been madness. It's been such madness, and it's so time consuming. The market here is really crazy. And anyone who's looked for a place to live can attest on how effing stressful. And I've gotten several places, but I've turned them down for various reasons. And I'm continuing to heal. I want to just give a shout out also to Jimmy that like a month ago, I went to an event and I met Lisa Litecoin in person, and Clint Westwood and Jimmy.
Did you meet Realist News? Jason 4, was he there as well? Because I think they were at the same event.
Jason was there, yes. Yeah. I met him also in person. Jenny was there.
Awesome.
So it was in St. Pete in a hangar. So that was really, really nice to hug people and to see people like Lisa Litecoin. And then Jimmy gave me, who's been following, he must be watching, he gave me these beautiful silver coins.
Are you talking about Jim Montgomery?
Yes.
Awesome. He's one of our moderators. Thank you so much, Jim. You're amazing.
And I'm sleeping with them because I was told that it accentuates dreams. So they're usually under my head.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and I'm very happy to be here and showcase Lindsey and see you, JC.
Well, good to see you again. You look absolutely great. And folks, if you're looking for that George Floyd trilogy that Maryam and I produced quite a few months ago, you can still find it here on BeyondMystic.net. You're looking for that in the pay-per-view library. And of course, as she's getting further and further into the book, a lot of these episodes now are starting to make a lot of sense as more evidence is coming through. Even though Maryam was hot on the heel of this evidentiary trail quite a few months ago, she was indeed the trailblazer. Just quickly on that, Maryam, how far are you from the book?
Too.
Okay, and how far are you from the book?
I'm two-thirds finished, and you know, there was an appeal, right, by Derek Chauvin, and I shared my trailer, and the lawyer for the appeals was like, "Wow, this is great. Can I see the rest?" He said, "I want to see the rest," and I'm like, "Yeah, I want to see the rest too." So I need, you know, I did find an editor. He's been going through a lot, and we're supposed to speak, and you know, I have a budget set for him, which is part of the reason why I'm fundraising. And then maybe there are new people watching today after my short-lived viral video. And so what happened was on New Year's Eve, I went to a place called the Pink Taco, and I was dancing up a storm. And I was the only one on the dance floor, as I am oftentimes. And then on the way back to my apartment, there was a microphone. And I'm like, "Are you doing a man on the street?" And I literally snatched that microphone. He took it back from me. And I have to say, I was very excited, and they chopped it up a lot. But guess what, mofos? It went viral. It went viral.
So, Maryam, I retweeted that and I posted it on Instagram and also on my Telegram. And as I was just about to play it now to show the audience, it says the file is no longer there. So I don't know if
it's there. It's gotten picked up by Wasted. It got picked up by another site.
Okay.
Yesterday.
Well, while we do the show here tonight, find me one of those links that works, and I'll absolutely share it with the audience, because I think.
Okay, and I just want to say that it blew up in their face, and then people started looking for me, and people would be like, "Oh, that's Maryam. That's the B lady," because they didn't put B-E-E. They put B, like I'm not the A lady, I'm the B lady. And then I went and I did an Instagram, and for the first time, I had 4,000 people watching me, which is how it fucking should be. And then the day after, now I'm banned on Instagram. I can't do Instagram lives. Can you imagine?
Imagine that. What are the odds, Maryam? What are the odds?
So I'll look for that. Sorry, Lindsey. Okay. I'm done.
Okay. Oh, you're great.
Blah, blah. Thank you.
Okay. Maryam, why don't you introduce to the audience here, Lindsey, how you guys met, and then let's talk about your first healing ceremony with her, and that'll kind of set the stage here for the show. And then I'm going to bring Lindsey up and ask her how universe conspired to bring her to the work she's doing, because it's absolutely fabulous, and I'm sure the audience is very interested in learning all about that. So let's start with you, Maryam. How did you meet her, and tell us about this first healing ceremony?
We were on Union of the Unwanted, and this was several months ago, and I believe Lindsey invited me on her show, but because I haven't been grounded, I didn't make it to that date. I think it was December 3rd. And then I went on Rogue Ways, and I saw what she does, and it's quite a variety of things, which we'll get into, obviously. And then the other day, a few days ago now, I was blessed to do a ceremony with Lindsey, which hopefully we can talk about. And what I really liked, well, I love the deck that she works with. I love the fact that she also doesn't, can't be put in a box, just like me and just like the honeybees don't like to be put in a box. And that we will get into the theme of, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, Lindsey, apotropaic.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And so apotropaic is warding off evil. So as someone who's Greek, Egyptian, I grew up with the evil eye and tusu, which is like tu, you spit in the evil eye. And so just that notion of warding off evil. And she also works with psychic attacks and trauma. And we did this beautiful ceremony. I'll allow her to share about herself, and then we can maybe get into some specifics on what came up in this beautiful ceremony. So Lindsey's very eclectic and gifted. She's an author and she's written books. There's just an array of healing modalities and things that she offers. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Lindsey, welcome to Beyond Mystic. And let me start with my first time viewer or a guest question here on the show. And it goes like this: how did universe conspire to bring you to the work you're doing today?
I love the wording of that question, because that is exactly how it goes, as you well know. Yeah, and so it's a complicated answer, right? As always, the long answer includes my childhood being very, in touch empathically. And I really didn't know that for a long time, that, these beings I was interacting with and talking to, and when I was talking to trees and all these things, that I actually was doing that. You get taught that it's just a figment and not really happening. And, as time went on, I had just a unimaginable amount of paranormal types of things happening to me, often in the form of attack and various different attacks. And I also have had CPTSD from multiple traumas in my own life, and I've healed from that. And while these things all seem a little bit separate, they definitely came together to have just a life of learning from different shamans, different spiritual leaders, different sorts of traditions. And, this is part of why I think it is hard to put me in a box, because I've taken from all of them, all the experiences I've had, all the teachers that I've had, and all of the paths that I've sort of walked, and I've just put them together into a, like Maryam so aptly put it, a just plethora of modalities to apply for people. And so, my site itself, as you scroll through it, has various different healing aspects to it, as well as all of the books that I write. But I really, one day was guided to sort of tear my life apart, and in ways that people probably thought I was insane for doing. But I was a teacher for 14 years, and this is part of my healing of the world. I really love people, and this is why I became a teacher. But it just wasn't working for me anymore. And so eventually I went and decided to quit that and get in a van and drive around the continent. And as I did that, I sold my house, I sold my car, I sold all these things that I didn't need, that didn't fit in the van, basically. And I just went wandering, and I allowed the universe to just guide me from sort of place to place and person to person. And this is how I found my true soulmate, my love, and ended settling in a totally different part of the country. I'm in Colorado now. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And while doing all of that, it really was this rebirth in which I was guided. I had done tarot readings for people before this, but I had never done any of my other spiritual work. This is about 4 years ago now. And I should say I had done it, but just not under the guise of, here's the name of the service, here's how much it costs, here's what you get out of it. It was much more organic, and when people found themselves in needs, they'd come to me and I'd be able to help. But this was when I finally put it all together and was really guided to, in fact, and I didn't really want to offer some of these things necessarily, to the public. But you can't really resist the call when it happens that way. And so I did end up putting together various things that I can offer to people, one being tarot, one being what I call a guidance session, where I just work with people depending on whatever they feel they need to deal with. Sometimes it's attack, and sometimes it's just, I've had these really weird experiences and I don't really know what they are, and maybe you can help me understand them. And that's what part of what Maryam was saying is just tailorable to whoever is coming and whatever they need. And then I also do ceremonies like we did with Maryam, which was really nice.
Okay. You went a little bit fast on the childhood here. I usually like to spend a little bit more time there, because I also had one of those weird childhoods, and I was kind of like apart from everybody else, and I was trying to figure out how to fit in. And for me, that was reading hands. I thought I was going to make friends by showing some of these gifts. I was very empathic also, and I could just naturally read hands. It didn't work out so well, I have to say, in the schoolyard as a kid. But let's go back to you. You mentioned beings. You were interacting with beings. Could you develop that a little bit more? I'm sure a lot of the audience members are like, which ones? What is she talking about? You said trees, but who else is in that cast of characters there?
Well, some of them are just my individual guides. And this is something that Mary and I talked about too. There's entities that are really singular and specific, you know, and they're often attached to certain people, and you can call them like your guardian angels or your guides or your allies is what I usually call them, just as a catch-all. And so some of them are very specific just to me, and so I don't think anybody else would know them. But what's interesting is when I was a child, I had them as imaginary friends. And then, you know, years later, as an adult, I'd have psychic readings, or, you know, people who didn't know me from anything tell me, oh, you have this, you know, blonde woman and then this dragon. And I'm like, yeah, those are my imaginary friends from childhood. They've been here the whole time. Which I think is true for a lot of people as well. I think a lot of people's imaginary friends are actually their guides and allies and angels. But I also, you know, I was raised actually Lutheran, and not so much, but that's the church we went to, and we went sometimes. So I just had a proclivity towards sort of that tradition. So when I first started doing healing work or having healing work done for me, Jesus, Mary, and Michael the Archangel were the three that I was closest to. And I really think it's because those were the only ones I had any knowledge of. Since then, I've had, you know, guides and allies and from all different traditions, not just those, but those are my three primary for a long time. And I work a lot with Amitofu, Guanyin, and I always mess up his name, Avakaloteshvara.
It's a harder one to say.
It is a lot to say.
Very good. Okay. And do you have any recollections of maybe being aboard craft?
I do. Yeah.
Do you want to, something's screaming at me to ask you that. So do you want to share a little bit of that?
Yeah, I have a couple different experiences, and I really think they're two different things. One, I don't remember the craft so much. I just remember being taken and it being uncomfortable and not feeling good about it. And that's the same time period that I had what I believe now, looking back, were two different implants in my body.
Wow.
And then I never got them out or had any evidence. So I don't, you know, I understand that that's just something that some people won't accept. But from my experience, I'm pretty sure that that's what it was.
Where were they?
I had one under this left ear, kind of just like behind the ear in the crevice. And then I had one in this shoulder right behind it. And that one still has like a depression. It's not a scoop mark depression, but you can basically like put your finger in my muscle where you should not be able to do that. There is like a little hole in the muscle, but the skin just covers it and you can just push it in. It's kind of disconcerting actually. But there was something hard there. It bothered me for a while and then it was just gone and there was nothing there. So I don't know, maybe it's some weird health, issue that I don't know about, but it seemed to me like it was happening at the same time. Right after this one disappeared, that one appeared, and then eventually that one disappeared too. So that was one set of experiences that I think are different. I almost wonder if those were more like my labs, military abductions, or more human related than anything else. Because then once I started clearing negative entity attachments and attacks, which I wouldn't have called it that at the time, but that's what was happening. Right. I stopped having those experiences and I started having more out-of-body astral travel experiences, but in ships with beings that were very definitely cognizant beings. They were just, I was interacting with them in an ethereal way. Right. And those were good experiences. Those were all positive. I shouldn't say they were all positive. Some of them were actually really frustrating, but I could tell that these beings were actually at least meant really well. I still don't know for sure exactly what's going on, but they feel good.
I get that a lot when they say, oh, JC, you'll know when it's time. Stop asking questions. And I get very frustrated because I want to understand everything right away. And it's kind of like, no, it'll unpack later. So I don't know if you're having that same frustration. But going back to those implants, right now, apparently with the Mercury retrograde we're in also, and there's also another alignment, which I don't have in front of me right now. Apparently something's happening in a good way, perhaps to those people who have been implanted, in the sense that this retrograde is also disrupting those communications to the extent now where people are finding their implants, having them removed, or having a disconnection long enough for them to realize they're there and do something about it, like do an etheric clearing or go see a Reiki master, all these things. Can you speak to that also? Maybe in your practice, have you had any issues with that, either with yourself or with some of your clients?
No, when you're describing that, it really makes sense what I'm seeing people go through, but no one has specifically come to me, with implant issues or even abduction issues, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people come with different dark entities and demonic sort of attachments and effects going on, and a lot more people come with just our own sort of psychic, emotional trauma.
A lot of our baggage, yes, we're all traumatized here as humans on Earth. We all have to go through this matrix of control, and I know it's very difficult for all of us. And speaking of negative attachments and entities, Maryam's picked up a few along the way, including some in Egypt that she had some hard time getting rid of. So Maryam, maybe recount that very quickly here to the audience. There's a lot of new members since the last time you spoke about that. It was two and a half years ago on my first channel before it got deleted twice. So talk about that a little bit, and also start getting into this first ceremony you had with Lindsey, and share that with the audience.
So I hosted a TLC documentary on the Ark of the Covenant. I'm Egyptian Greek, and I basically saw a Craigslist ad, and I was like, oh, they're looking for me, and went to Egypt. This is the first time I hail from Montreal, Canada. And we had a fixer, and we were in Luxor. And he told me there's these Shepti dolls, Shepti, Shepti, and they replaced they used to bury the slaves alive with the pharaoh, and they infused psychic energy into these dolls. And so he told me to take a doll, and I took two. And I became like Frodo. I was like, I must have part of my precious. Precious. And then that night, even though, I speak Arabic, French, Greek, but that night I don't dream in Arabic. And I started hearing Hatshepsut, which is not a very nice pharaoh. And I also heard the word Sibiha, which means leave her. And I was like, oh, I can't leave the dolls at the Sheraton. So I basically came back to the United States, and when I was going back to Cairo, I asked the director, my friend Bruce, who also did the documentary Bloodline, and asked him, what did you do with your doll? And he said, I had a bad feeling. I put it in a planter. And I was like, why the F didn't you tell me to do that? And as soon as I walked back into my apartment in LA, I could smell the doll. I usually have supernasal powers, not like now where I literally can't smell anything, which is very destabilizing. And I was told that I was cursed because what happened, sorry, I'm trying to summarize the story. What happened was I developed very bad insomnia. And I did automatic handwriting, and with my right hand, I said, why am I not sleeping? And then with my left hand, when I looked at what I wrote black entity is attached, and I scared the shit out of myself. And then I went to see someone, and I didn't tell them I was working on the set of Catwoman during pickups and reshoots. And I told the person, I went to see a doctor on the PCH called Dr. Ohm, and I said, maybe I'm just stressed. I'm not sleeping because I'm taking care of this man, the director. And he goes, oh, you're taking care of more than one person. And without me saying anything, he told me that I had picked up an entity. And then I ended up having an exorcism with a healer from Tanzania. And since then, I've had other entities, and we can talk about the ceremony and what came of that as well. So that was a very scary experience to have that entity. I shipped the doll back to Cairo.
Okay. Wow. Yes, and folks, that video is still on my Odyssey, and I was just bringing up now the documentary of Maryam Henein. It was the Ark of the Covenant, and so anyways, that's in the description box below. If you haven't seen that documentary, please go and check that after the show. Lindsey, why don't you set up here the modality here of this ceremony that you did with Maryam, and then we'll ask her to recount her experience there, and then we'll come back to you to round out the corners there to explain to the audience here how all of this is done.
Yeah, it's I'm not surprised that you got that attachment from such a an object, and it's almost the opposite of apotropaic, actually, right? Or it's like attracted to evil, actually. And the exorcism, you know, is exactly what you needed. And part of what I do can end up being like an exorcism. It just depends on the person. It's different for every person. So I give people an idea of like, here's the basics of what I can explain to you, but really every person's ceremony is so different that it's hard to describe to people what I actually do. But the basics of it are I use my own shamanic training. It's mostly a shamanic background sort of ritual that is going on in ceremony. And I do the ceremony for an hour before we meet. If we could all be in person, it would be great to be in the same room and do it, but it doesn't really translate over video. So it just, I just do it, you know, by myself. And, you know, I use a lot of different tools to do that. And basically I go into ceremonial space is what I call it. I think some people would call it, it's almost like it's kind of like a trance. It's almost like astral travel, but it's like a step before that, I guess is what I'd say. And basically what I'm doing is I'm going into, you know, for example, Maryam's soul space. And so that's just what I call it. And in this space, I can see all of these different aspects of self and psyche and emotion and trauma and all different things. And then I ask Maryam's guides to come forward in protection of her during the ceremony. And then I ask them to show me and my guides basically what we can do there. And so that's why I say it's different for everyone, because what some people need is a soul retrieval, which is a lot like an exorcism. And what some people need is a past life healing, which is a little bit like a soul retrieval, but just different. And what some people need is something totally different. And so we go about disconnecting negative entities and attachments if that's what's there to do. And if not, we go around usually finding like, well, where are the, you know, dark spaces? Where are the sort of traumas and shadows that need some light? And then we do bring light there and we bring healing there. I often watch soul level transformations going on for people. So, you know, the way they might appear at the beginning might be shattered or broken or scared or sad or who knows what. And then by the end, oftentimes they're this giant glowing, you know, love and light pouring in and just filling up with all of this goodness. And so it's really, really beautiful for me. I feel honored to do it for anybody because I get to see I get to feel and experience rather some of the most amazing miracles, you know, and it's because people trust me enough to allow me into that space, you know, which is a really profound duty. And I'm just very honored. So I did that with Maryam the other day.
Awesome. And where does the shamanic drumming come into? I'm just picking up this picture here. I could see the frequency already here, but where does that come into your lineage or your modality? And explain also how for you sound, frequency, and vibration is important in your ceremony and in your healing work.
Yeah, thank you. I don't really have a lineage or that I can speak of. I've just been drawn to various shamans throughout my life, every single time completely without trying to, because that's just how the universe works. So I'll just be plucked up and thrown into the sort of arms of a random shaman. And then they will, usually what it is they pluck me out and they're like, hey, like you need some healing. I don't know if you knew that, but you should probably come with me. And I always come from a place of great skepticism. You know, I'm like, yeah, sure, huckster. Like you would say that. That's what you do.
Of course.
Right. So this has just happened sort of almost against my will. And each time I am healed, then it's always in this miraculous, profound way that I could not have ever expected. So then I'm like, well, teach me what you're doing. Right. And I actually do have Native American heritage. My father was adopted by a white family. But they wrote Caucasian on his birth certificate and it was a closed adoption. So we don't know our actual heritage. And so we just say that we're of the lost tribe. But I feel like my roots have conspired to bring me back into some connection with that. Because again, I do use some other modalities from various traditions, but the majority of them are shamanic actually. And I've learned them from, you know, Native American shamanic teachers from Ecuador and from the States and all sorts of traditions. So the drum was just like the shamanic experiences I've had. I just was randomly brought into a drum making class and and I didn't even really mean to do it. But then I was like, well, that'd be kind of fun. And I figured it was going to be like a crafty sort of drum, you know, like the paint and sip nights or something like that. Yeah. And then I got there and this guy's like, well, here's your horse skin and here's your, you know, oak tree ring. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a real drum. And then I was so I was like, of course my life would bring me to make this drum. And so after I created the drum, I sat in, meditative space with it and just asked it, how would you like to be of service, and how should I use you, basically? Because again, I'm self-taught in most of the things I do. And this is how I go about finding out how to use different tools, is I just ask them, will you just show me what you like to do, and we'll work together. And this drum, whose name is a Fucus Moon, had told me that what it really wants to do is to create that space of light that is protective around people who are receiving ceremonial healing work from me, to keep those negative energies out during that time. And so I actually used the drum at the very beginning of the ceremony to drum away the sort of negativity and create this circle of light that then the allies hold tight while we were then working for the next hour.
That's amazing. Deborah says, hey, Lindsey is amazing. Love her energy. I do too. I agree with you, Deborah. That's amazing. And you know what you just said? I'll get to Maryam here in a second. But what you just said about the shamans finding you, I found that to be the same thing for me all through my life. And more recently in New Mexico, we were doing work there to basically heal some of the divine masculine warriors in some of the mountains near the Trinity explosion site. And as we were doing that, we were basically met by some of these medicine women and tribes people around who said, who are you guys? But you're white. They were all surprised we were doing that work, and then realized, no, okay, we have to share some stuff with you. You're actually here, and we want to share that with you. So I've had that similar experience. That's absolutely amazing. Maryam, so let's set up the stage for this ceremony. How did you walk into it? How did you feel? What were your expectations? And run us through here the gamut.
Sorry, I had the notes that Lindsey sent to me. I want to touch upon how did you come to work with this word apotropaic, if you don't mind me asking, and kind of get this niche of working with people who've had psychic attacks?
Yeah, apotropaic was actually a word given to me by my good friend when I want to say we were 16, and we were both just word nerds. Like I'm an author and I was an English teacher when I was a teacher, and so he found this word in an unabridged dictionary, which I love to tell people there are unabridged dictionaries, which means that if your dictionary doesn't say unabridged, it is abridged, meaning there's not all the words in it. And that blew my mind. Even that back in the day, I was like, why would we want a dictionary that's not complete? Like, come on. So anyways, we liked to play with the unabridged dictionary, and he found this word, and I was asking him, what does it mean? And he was saying it has an object that is naturally and automatically resistant to evil. And it just struck me, and I loved it so much. I love the sound of it. I love the word itself, and I love that concept. And my instant thought at the time, and still to this day, is, well, that's me. I'm naturally resistant to evil. Evil tries and has tried my whole life to bring me down and attack me in various ways, and it never wins. And thank God I'm so protected and assisted along the way. But, there's various objects that I also think that we have felt throughout time, whether this word has not existed this long or not, the concept of things that are naturally resistant to evil has been around forever, right? This is why we run hide under the blankets when we are really scared, because the blankets are apotropaic, right? Or things like crucifixes, and in different traditions like the evil eye, and all sorts of objects and items that we feel are naturally imbued with this energy, right? Shungite and various things as well. So I just love the concept. I love the word. Being a word nerd, it struck, and I've just kept it forever.
Yeah, I love it too. And I feel, in these Luciferian times that we need things that ward off evil. I just have another question too. Have you done, I'm curious, sweat lodges?
Yes, many times.
I see you in a sweat lodge.
Yeah, when I was very young, I also was invited to go into a sweat lodge. I think I was 14. It was right in the middle of dealing with some really heavy negative entity attacks and demonic attacks and poltergeist activity. And so when they invited me to go, I was just like, this is so dumb. Like, I'm going to go hang out with some old women in a fire or something. Like, I just was such a punk. I was like, this is the worst. But somehow my sister convinced me to go, you know, because it's our heritage and she wants us to be connected to it. Was much better than I at the time. And she dragged me along. And so that was my first sweat way back then. And this is actually synchronistically part of the reason I was able to escape from a demonic attack was something I learned that night from one of the elders.
Wow. I used to do in Pasadena in my past life pre BC, before Corona, and really loved doing sweats, and then share a meal at the end. Did it with the Lakota as well, and it's quite intense, but such a wonderful purge and cleansing to go in. Just miss that. So I don't know. I just looked at you. I was like, oh, I could see her doing a sweat. So as far as the ceremony, you know, it was on the heels of this full moon. And I personally, as Lindsey was having the ceremony and holding space for me, I had a conversation that I wasn't expecting with someone, wasn't expecting to speak to him. And then kind of got quiet and journaled. Earlier that day, I went to the ocean and I sat down, and I've just been going through a lot. I don't know what it is exactly that I've been going through, because it's been dark, and I've been feeling, even though I love my solitude, I'm really like yearning so much for community, like physical community. And I've met some beautiful people here in Miami, and there was one woman, Stella, who I'll also do a shout out, that is familiar, watches your show, JC, and came to my prison protest, because I also organized the protest for the Grenon family. And she invited me to a drum circle, which I didn't go to, but you know, these people, there are people who exist, and I've connected with them. Anyway, so I got into a, you know, meditative space, and then went on Zoom with Lindsey, and she sent me a whole bunch of notes and talked to me about my allies in the north and the east and the south and the west, which is also kind of, you know, in drums or in sweat lodges, you know, you honor the different directions, right? Yeah. So there's different guides that came about that I can share, but I think if we can premise, and Lindsey can talk about what came up as far as the attacks around me, or what she saw, maybe you can share that, because it's very apropos and it's not a surprise, and it's like, oh yeah, of course.
Well, for sure. Hold on a second, Lindsey. For sure, a lot of people watching this show too are very much into the fight. They are the light warriors of this world right now, and because they're shining so bright and they're sticking out, they are also attracting a lot of these, let's just call them attacks in brackets for now. So maybe set that up, and then bring it into context here with the healing session with Maryam.
Yeah, we are all definitely undergoing this, and especially with the Cinco Geo going online.
Like it.
You know, I just feel like that's a portal literally for even more of these types of entities to just roll right out and attach to people. And so, you know, I always want to point out to people, first of all, is that we have far more allies of light and love around us than anything else at every given time. And even when the attacks are heavy, that those beings are still there, and we can all call out to them and reach out to them, and they will always be there for you. So whoever you trust and love in light is there. So never worry. It doesn't make it easy all the time, but I just like to point that out, because we do get into some dark territory sometimes. And you know, in Maryam's ceremony specifically, I told her, and she knows that I saw more dark entities and negative energy attacks around that sphere that we set up. It's, you know, that pushes all of that out to the edges, and they can't get in, than I've ever seen in anyone I've ever dealt with. I've dealt with very, very dark forces singularly, and sometimes in groups. And I had never seen this many just like waiting at the edges, like wanting to get in. And I'm not surprised because, Maryam, you might also be the highest profile person I've been lucky enough to do a ceremony with. And I think part of that public eye also calls them, so not only are you a beautiful, bright, shining light in the world, not only are you fighting for what's good, true, and beautiful, but you're doing it very publicly. And so you would get even more sort of attacks like this. So I described it to her too, that none of them were specifically attached, which is a really awesome, beautiful sign, right? Yeah. And that's not always true. It's not true for a lot of people. So that I really appreciated and enjoyed seeing, but I've never seen. And just the weight of that and the constancy of it must be overwhelming in itself. Mm-hmm. It was very intense.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're dealing with a lot. How do you do it?" And it's like, just another day in my life.
Just another Tuesday.
Right.
But it's true. And it's like, in my career and in my success, there's nothing, I have a beautiful company, Honey Colony and Simply Transformative. And I was $1 million company, and I would have been a wealthy woman actually doing good. And what can I say when I'm taking big karma and big tech on, and I banked on the connectivity of big tech. And so, what is it that I can do other than clear or have people like Lindsey assisting? But I don't think it's a lack of hard work. I'm a hard worker. I'm a hard worker bee. And I'm so glad to hear that none of them were attached, but it definitely resonated at the amount. And, this viral video is like, yeah, you tried to give an FU and make me look crazy, and it blew up in your faces, mofos. So
that's apotropaic. When evil tries to attack you and it instead turns it into a win, that's apotropaic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maryam, also, Lindsey, did you feel, so one, it's a good thing they weren't attached, but they're constantly on the lookout to find that crack. I think for a lot of the audience members, they'll find also that when they have 2 or 3 other issues in their life they're dealing with, it could be with the partner or the work issue because they don't want to take the thing and now they're losing their job maybe. And as those little things are starting to happen in their lives, maybe a crack opens up, and then suddenly these attacks are just waiting for basically that. Can you express that also and share that with the audience, and how to maybe foresee some of those cracks forming and close them and heal them before you have to then remove entities? Explain that process, how maybe some people can guide themselves through that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's very.
I hope that makes sense. I was translating from French. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay.
No, that makes perfect sense. And in fact, Maryam and I talked about how while none of those were directly attached, that doesn't mean, like you said, they are waiting for the crack, and the crack can come in the form of anything. It can come through an animal. It can come through a person that who is maybe weak in that moment. And it definitely can easily, unfortunately, come through, especially alcohol, any amount of it. Even a tiny bit. So I personally don't drink because I
neither. Nothing. No booze.
Yeah, because it's too hard. I mean, I do this work all day, every day, and so I can't afford to have any cracks open ever, right? And so that's one way to keep the cracks out. And I'm not saying I have any problem otherwise with drinking at all, and everyone should make their own choices, but they should at least consider, if they're having a hard time keeping the cracks closed, maybe cut that one out and see what happens. It can be a life transformer. But a lot of times,
alcohol and also the sugar, just for the audience members too. Cutting the sugar levels in your body too is a big win in terms of that, for sure. Keep going.
True, because parasites actually feed off of that kind of stuff, and they are also a little doorway. There's so many of them. Obviously, like we talked about, the Cinco Geo and other types of radiation like that could be best to keep out as much as possible. I'm not the best at that, and we live these technologically, savvy lives, and so that's just what it is. But especially if you're noticing a lot of attacks or a lot of different things going on, then that would be one to just see what you can do with less of that. And then, it's harder to get to the aspects that are people who are sort of embedded in our lives. We all have our own psychological and emotional reasons for allowing in certain people who, for whatever reason, like our relationship with them is its own sort of portal for these entities. And it is our own failure as much as anything else, so we can't just blame the person, but a lot of times that energy we're creating with them, especially if it's in any way codependent or just psychologically abusive, like in any way, these even minor little bits of that can be also little portals for things to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, unfortunately, sometimes animals can be in the wake of this as well. A lot of times people will be like, animals love me. And then all of a sudden they're like hissing at me and scratching me. And I'm like, that's not you. Like, that's something coming at you.
Well, okay, you're raising a good point there, because for most people, they'll see the transformation in their dog or their cat or whatever it is. It's evident that something's taken over. But it's not always that evident, because here too, in the cracks, I find in my life, I've often seen these attacks come to me through people around me who at the time were weak for one reason or another, right?
Yes.
That's not as easy to see, because you'll see that and you'll perceive that as maybe just a problem in a relationship, a problem with, the person at work, they're having a bad day. It's not as easy to determine that maybe what's coming from them is not actually coming from them. Can you talk about that and maybe share with people how to maybe distinguish that a little bit better, other than just raising your frequency yourself to kind of see a little bit further out? But what can you say to the audience there?
Yeah, that is so hard. And it's especially hard because we love these people. We don't want to see them in any kind of a negative light, and we don't want to see them as, portals or access points for this energy to come through. But the truth is, we are also at our worst and weakest points, little portals for this energy to come through. And that's exactly why I always say, when people say, well, what are we supposed to do about this whole Luciferian agenda and all that's going on in the world? And we've got to make this plan and this attack.
There's a Luciferian agenda going on around the world.
Something like that. Then I say, all you can do really is the best thing you can do, and that's to heal yourself. And when you do this, you are automatically creating less and less portals and access points for these things to come through, but you're also healing yourself, which is nice. And then you're also healing all the people around you, right? Because as your energy rises, they respond to that and react to that and hold themselves to a higher standard as well. Oh. It's true, too, that we really are what do they say? Like the conglomeration of the 5 closest people to us. That's what our attitude starts to be. And that's what we start to think about and talk about. And so if you are exposing yourself to someone who is constantly sort of falling down, and I'm not saying abandon people, I'm just saying you may want to ask yourself, like, well, is this relationship healthy for me? Actually, am I giving way more than I ever get out of it? Am I putting up with some sort of abuse or even, slight disrespect? It's like, that's not what's best for me. So if you can, it's excellent to confront might not be the best word, but, confront the person, and especially if they're in a moment of weakness or possible cracking through, and you just say to yourself or even to them out loud, higher mind, higher love, and then ask them, like, are you feeling okay? Or, is there anything that we can do? Because when you are showing that love, even to this darkness, a lot of times that's what breaks through to people and pulls them back out. And they're like, oh man, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to need a minute or whatever it is to take care of this. But yeah, we can't control other people. We can only control ourselves. So sometimes it is, unfortunately, you got to cut some people out.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, because meaning, like, if you're being attacked, they do use other people that have cracks that are not embodied, and will use that to get to the person. I mean, I've experienced that. And then what can you do other than cut the other person off or keep your vibration up and be aware if someone's not embodied or not taking this stuff seriously?
Yes.
Was that a question?
Well, it's just it's a statement.
Well, Lindsey, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. It's hard to find people who are truly, like, as you said, embodied and really ensouled even, right? And present and cognizant of that. it's almost like passe in our society. Like it's just not appropriate to be spiritual and talk about it. Obviously it is here amongst all of your amazing audience and you two beautiful souls. But in general, that's not appropriate, right? We're supposed to be materialists. We are supposed to be, nose to the ground and whatever. And so it's hard sometimes to find people who really, truly do live this. And we also often get this like shallow, what someone called it something the other day. They said, because I always say like, oh, I'm not new age, but I mean, I am according to most people, right? I wear crystal earrings for God's sake. So obviously I am, but someone the other day called it new cage. And I was like, I really like that because it's with any spiritual movement, any spiritual trend, we get this shallowness of spirituality, right? It's not the New Age's fault. New Age hits on a million things that are beautiful and good, but it also attracts these sort of hordes of people who want to rush into it and very, very shallowly dive into it and then pretend like they're like amazing. Sorry, if you haven't looked at your own shadow, you're not as amazing as you think you are. And that's the hard work, right?
And you know what's funny? During these last 2 years, as bad as it was also a catalyst for a lot of people to do exactly that, what you just mentioned, go do that shadow work, go through and visit that core wound and do all of that work. And for a lot of people, especially people watching the show, they did exactly that. For some other people, it went the other way and they watch Netflix. So but that's okay. To everyone, to each their own. But let's talk about sex a little bit here. You mentioned earlier that we are the agglomeration of the 5 people we hang around with. We haven't talked about how these attacks also come through that particular portal, one. Yeah. And two, what's also happening now around the world. These are the lovely young ladies in Australia who are unabashedly looking for, you know what, because they know what's going on and they want to be clean. In all the sense of the word. So let's talk about how that ties into this conversation here also.
And I would just want to say before you begin, Lindsey, that Bernard Gunther, who's been a guest, had told me many years ago, sexually transmitted diseases. How about sexually transmitted demons? And I find that a lot, and no judgment again, but like I've never had a one night stand, maybe because I don't drink. And because I'm very discerning with what goes inside of me in all manners. So yeah, add to that.
Yeah. Well, this is the most spiritual intimacy you can have with another human is sexual intimacy. And our society has done everything they can to dismantle that and rip it apart. And I mean everything they can. It's not just about depopulation. It really is about tearing apart the union of two people on the sexual level. And it's hard too, because even the word sexual has been so debased that when I say that, I'm like, that doesn't even really describe it, right? Because it really is a spiritual level. You're really choosing somebody to, I liked how you put it, very like they're going to be inside of you literally, spiritually, energetically, emotionally, mentally, in all the different ways and physically. Man, like, wouldn't you want that person to be the most spiritually badass person you could find who really can unite with you and accept all of you, who can look at your shadows just like you did and say, yep, that's true. That's what we're working through together. Who wouldn't want that, right? But we've been trained to think one night stands are awesome. Again, I also have no judgment. I know there's this strong aspect of spirituality that's all about, sexual liberation. And I think some people really do need that, right? Like they need to like let go of all their repression and go out and do things that seem really fun to them. That's cool. Yeah. But at some point, the height of spiritual expression is in this union with one person who is your closest soul level ally that you could find in human form.
It's called divine union and sacred sex for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is also why every single tradition either outright openly talks about or encodes this Kundalini awakening, this Kundalini energy that you can access. Primarily, the best route is through that exact sexual union, through the divine masculine and the divine feminine coming together. All kinds of things about how, why, when, whatever. But how is that so universal and ubiquitous if it is not one of the most powerful tools we have? We can create literally a human life with this, but we can also create anything with this. We can create our spiritual, our soul, ourself, our own awakening. We can create all sorts of physical things as well. Manifestations can be even more powerful with this energy. So this is a really important attack that has been ongoing against the entire human population, to keep that suppressed and to instead turn sex into this demon creation machine, basically. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Well, we live in the energy extraction matrix, and a big part of that energy is that Kundalini you're just talking about. On my first YouTube channel, I started this series called the KFiles, the Kundalini Secrets Revealed, and YouTube immediately went and deleted and banned all those videos. There was a reason, I guess. You can't talk about that. You can have, the Rihannas dancing in the Baphomet and the blood and cutting up people all you want on YouTube.
Yes.
That's absolutely fully monetized. But these conversations were not. But what was interesting here, based on what you were just saying here too, Penny Kelly said, for humanity to understand and to recapture the use of their own Kundalini energy is the last gate to our freedom. That is huge, and that has all the implications of what Lindsey is talking about. And then when you talked about manifestation, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, also a very well learned Kabbalist and Freemason, he talked about at those level how they understand that at the moment of orgasm, the thoughts you hold are much, much, much stronger to coming towards reality, to materializing, to manifesting. And these people use that in order to control the rest of us. This is the matrix that we live in now. So I won't go too much into that here because we're probably going to have this video deleted. But if you guys can still find those on my old Odyssey channel where there was a backup, you might find those very, very interesting for sure. So, okay. Let's get back into maybe the finale of your ceremony, Maryam.
Yeah, I want to do a shout out to Polly P too that I also met. So
I saw he posted a picture of you on his Telegram. I'm like, hey, that's Polly P, man. You look good. You look good, Polly. I met Polly in Texas, I guess 3 years ago.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's awesome meeting people in real life. So in the north, I'll start with the north. Lindsey saw someone that she called a grandmother of distance. So maybe someone in my ancestry. And just to kind of confirm that, I don't think I told you, Lindsey, but I was in the Osprey area and I really needed some body work. And I made an appointment, but I walked into the wrong place. And it was a Moroccan brown girl like me, and she spoke French, and she goes, sometimes you take the wrong train to get to the right destination. And she had just gotten and she had been bleeding for 24 days straight, but she came to me and she's like, can I touch you before our massage? And she held me. She goes, wow, you're good. And then like a good spirit. And then she worked on me. And at one point in the massage, she stepped away and she was just standing there. And then after she said, I saw an older woman and I was kind of taken aback, someone who was an elder. So maybe that's the grandmother at a distance. So that person was in the north. And said, I am light and flow and dancing soul. And so anyone who knows me knows I'm a dancer. And anywhere I go, I mean, if I were to pick two things I do well, it's dancing and writing. And I'm often the first at the dance floor to allow other people. And dancers are healers too. So she came directly through and Lindsey saw her and she said, she wrote, which is very nice. Lindsey took the time to write all these notes with the link to the recorded session, which is something, if you work with her, you will receive. This is a powerful piece of your spiritual power and skill that you bring into the world, perhaps more than you understand, which I do understand it. And I allow spirit to dance me. And it's beautiful, so beautiful, because it's channeling, really. And then in the east, she saw a jackal that had stepped forward, an ally of travel and companionship and undying loyalty. He said, it's a tribe. We unite. As a tribe, we survive. I'm sorry. Okay, and then she said that he also came forth in a powerful way later in the ceremony to lay upon my wounded throat chakra and to keep me howling. And then I shared with her that when I was young, I used to go, ow, 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 ow. And my mother used to say, Mary, arrête, tu appelles le démon. Stop, Mary, you're calling in the devil. Which, no, I wasn't. So in the South, she saw what stepped forward was an immense crystal dragon who have not encountered in another person. I may not have mentioned I also have a crystal dragon ally, and I was so happy to see this raw power that you channel and are connected to. And the crystal dragon said, my darling, I surround you. I am you. We are power. And he came forward in a powerful way later in a vision of meditation that was designed by your allies just for you, in which he helps you to melt and remove the chains that are holding you back. And then in the West, the ally that stepped forward was the Dark Mother, a goddess of night and darkness. So you mentioned the Egyptian goddess Net. Is it Net? Net, sorry. This is where your infinite potential lays, and this is where the bulk of your work we did together comes forward, and where your ongoing work will do wonders in transforming your life. The mother of darkness, covered in chains only because of your illusion and not in reality. And the mother of darkness said, dive deep roots down, my love. She offered the vision of this meditation, and then Lindsey described this beautiful lotus that is supporting me, so that even if I thought I was falling, that I wouldn't be falling, that I'm held. I'm sorry, I'm crying. It's super beautiful, Lindsey.
Absolutely beautiful. You're giving me chills all over, Maryam. Thank you for sharing that. You're the bravest girl I know. You keep doing all of these healing ceremonies and sharing that with the audience here. Every time you do that, you just rock my world. Lindsey, listening to Maryam now, how did that make you feel? And how did you perhaps deal with the rest of the ceremony here to bring that to a close?
Yeah, I was crying the whole ceremony, and I was crying through part of describing it to Maryam afterwards too, which is again part of the beautiful experience I get to have when I get to do these for people, because it is touching, it is beautiful, and I'm experiencing all of it as well. And so it's overwhelming sometimes, and it's actually, I mean, for our allies to come forth in such beautiful ways and offer such a specific meditation and ceremony for Maryam to then go and take and, apply and do in her own life is just amazing. It's not always, there's almost always some suggestions, like this person would do well to do this type of thing or that type of thing. And sometimes it's food and drink related, and sometimes it's exercise related. There's all sorts of things. But when it's like that, it's like this very specific visualization, meditation, and ceremony. I'm just so honored, again, because this is created. Maybe if we went looking through who knows how many books or traditions or things, we might find a very similar meditation that's offered to people. But as far as I know, it's completely unique to Maryam, and it's only Maryam's. And so, of course, it would be more powerful. And the meditation, again, was to imagine that lotus beneath her. Because what I kept seeing, and maybe this is a good time to mention this, I kept seeing it since the night before. So I can always tell how powerful someone's soul is when I start to receive their allies' input and things like a day before the ceremony even happens. But all night long, Maryam's soul and I were like working together. Every single dream I had, Maryam was there, and we were doing something or another. And I really actually think that's part of what made the ceremony even more powerful, is that Maryam's soul was so ready. She was like, okay, let's do this. What can we get out of the way to begin with? And like, just get to the heart of everything. And that's really, really cool to see too.
Maryam was born ready.
Yeah, definitely a brave soul, like you said, and a warrior spirit. And so that specific meditation again was so beautiful. And that's in the West, which is Maryam's infinite potential. Right. And so where all these chains were holding her down, I kept seeing her since the night before, just falling away from all of these chains that she couldn't get past or felt she couldn't get past. It's almost like a giving up, right? Like I give up. I'm just going to fall into infinity and let all of this go. And And those chains that were there are really, again, they're not coming from negative. Well, I shouldn't say that. They may be coming from negative entities from some direction. But a lot of it is this belief that they exist and belief that they can stop you, which is so hard. We all have this. We're all like, well, this is the world. Like, of course, something can stop me. Of course, there's going to be something in the way. Like, I can't change that. But it really is the belief and the agreement in that sometimes keeps those chains there. So that meditation that Maryam can now do every day, if she wants to, is going to start to change that message that is lodged in the subconscious and that belief and that fear into something that is instead empowered and active, and will remove all of those chains with the help of all of these extremely powerful allies. That crystal dragon is amazing. It's amazing to behold. But my favorite part of the ceremony was at the very end.
Do you want to share that? Who wants to go first?
You share that. I want to say that I think it's important, at least for me, to, and whoever works with Lindsey, to really put into practice the homework, for lack of a better word, to create that ritual. And it's something that was very much part of my life, which with the Rona, just all I've been doing is working and covering this horror. And as of late, just want to kind of step away from it. I mean, I'm very dedicated to finishing my book. And just to say, like, if people are saying that I'm courageous, like, one thing that people say to me over and over again is that I'm speaking their words. And so for whatever reason, I channel and I give voice to people, and I speak their words. And it's just like, you know, if I message someone and I wrote, I think I've said this example, "Hey, sweet pea." And I was like, I don't use the word sweet pea. And then she said, "Oh, that's what my mom used to call me." And so, you know, things come through because I'm a mirror, and empaths, you can relate to this. We're mirrors, and it's not always, doesn't feel good. But sometimes things come up and it's to like, hello, look at yourself. So yeah, we can talk about the last part, but I think for me, it's important to, you know, I didn't do it since we spoke. I didn't do the ritual. So I already forgot, because I feel also there's a quickening that's happening, and maybe people feel it, where time is moving so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
okay.
I love.
Before I get you on, Lindsey, hold on a second here. I have up on the screen for the audience Maryam's tip jar. It's on Venmo. Let me bring that link back down for you guys as well. Please do go and support Maryam here. She's looking for a place in Florida, and of course, she's still working very hard on that book for you guys. So
thank you. That whatever I raised today is I'm gonna get those exhibits. Like for instance, I didn't mention, but I wrote 2 stories on Charles Lieber. And I got access to footage that nobody has shown from the district attorney. And I've been lucky to go on a couple of shows to talk about Charles Lieber, who's the nanotech king, who's very integral in all this transhumanist agenda, just like, for instance, creating cyborg heart tissue. Isn't that convenient? So that will go, I don't even know how much the exhibits will cost me, but that's what I will use that money for.
Okay. And guys, if you want to stay in touch with the bee lady here on Twitter, you can find her. This is her new one. The last one was deleted also with all of this censorship.
If we can show Gab too. Yeah, I joke if you want to support my abusive relationship, because I had 30,000 and now I can't make 2,000.
Okay, so that's a Twitter. Give me a moment. I'll bring up the Gab one as well. Somebody in the chat is saying, "Hey, JC, can you bring up Lindsey's contact info?" Yes. Yes, I can. It's in the description box below, and I'll also bring up the links to her website here as we continue the conversation. So, Lindsey, back to you for the ceremony ending.
Well, and maybe if people are already headed to my site, then it might be good to also mention the coupon code BeyondMystic. Will get you a percentage off your entire cart. So whatever you're grabbing. I also have some really, really fun Orgone Lotus votive holder. I'm so excited. There's one actually there right at that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
I love these.
I'll bring up your shop page also, and I'll peruse that while you explain the ending of this ceremony here.
Yeah, I was very. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Yeah. Do you want to share about it?
No, go ahead. I can add to it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see him, but I was surprised. It doesn't. After what we had already done, there's not usually a whole an additional segment of ceremony, but this gigantic bumblebee came through. And he actually had been there the whole time. And I told Maryam, and I'll tell everyone that I just say he. It's just a thing I say. There's no gender actually to these beings. But he had actually come through earlier in the ceremony, but he was just saying, we'll carry her, don't worry, which is nice. There's always an ally that will carry a soul wherever it needs to go on the journeys that we go through in these times. But he came back at the end, and this bee is gigantic. And I told Maryam, the size of the being relative to my perspective is indicative of their sort of power. And so a lot of the animals that I usually interact with, they're normal size, as the same size as that animal would be sort of in the real life. And that just indicates that they are an cognizant entity, but they're not like this higher level. They're not like an angel, or they're not like a, sort of the king of their species or whatnot. But this was the giant bee. This bee was definitely like the collective bee soul and representative. So what an honor to meet this giant, powerful being. And this bee just came through and just held Maryam in this hug that was so tender and beautiful. There was so much compassion. And what was really there too, which was surprising to me, and I don't know if it was surprising to Maryam or not, but there was like a forgiveness going on. And what was really going on was, this giant representative of all bees everywhere was saying, like, you have nothing to feel sorry for. And so at some level, at some maybe even deep subconscious level, there was some aspect of Maryam that was saying, I didn't do enough, or I failed you somehow, or I just, I let it go, or something. I don't know what that is, but this bee wanted to be very sure that Maryam does not.
I feel like that every day. I feel like that every day. I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough. I didn't do enough. Because I'm really a worker bee. Mm-hmm. And the worker bees, work themselves to death, basically. And that's my choice. I choose that. Writing takes so much time, and people don't realize it. And a lot of times I write for free now, and I used to get paid $2 a word. And the same thing, with the book. It's been quite hard to find a publisher that's willing to publish the truth on what really happened. And it's like, oh, who cares about George Floyd? George Floyd was the event that allowed us to usher in a color revolution, that allowed us to go from virus to violence, to justify the lockdowns, to manufacture a fake racial war. And so it is very important. And it's very juicy, awesome, very interesting story. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's why maybe you saw this kind of forgiveness with the honeybee, with the bee. You saw a bumblebee. Those are honeybees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was saying too, the way that I see something is not, it's not an absolute, right? This is like the way that my consciousness is perceiving what's happening, and so the bumblebee honeybee part is probably in my brain not as nuanced as it would be in your brain.
Right.
So to me, it was just a bee, right. But yeah, and that tenderness, that forgiveness, and but their souls were both crying and hugging, and I was crying watching it. And then when I was explaining it to Mary later, I started crying again. And so very healing.
Very sweet.
Very sweet.
Awesome. Very good. Sweet like the bees, and they're amazing products. And speaking of amazing bee products, guys, don't forget also the coupon code BeyondMystic here at honeycolony.com. A lot of amazing products, including
I had someone,
the chelated silver.
Yeah, I had someone named Rob. He posted on Twitter like 6 or 7 bottles. I'm like, dude, that's like you're really stocking up. But like I wouldn't go anywhere without I'm nebulizing.
Well, with all the trucker shortages and delays and everything, you might want to stock up now. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm nebulizing to try to get my sense of smell back. I put a drop of iodine, and I got some hydrogen peroxide too, by the way, which kills stuff. May you talk, Lindsey, about the ritual of like you are saying at least once a day, after calling your allies here to surround you while you're in practice. I mean, is this something that comes up for everyone that you work with? Obviously not these guides, but is this ceremony that you did, does that come often, that you see guides and you formulate a ritual and tell people to practice?
Okay, hold on just a second here, Lindsey. We're already an hour 14 minutes in, and we told the audience members they could ask questions. So how's your energy level feeling? Do you have time to take a little bit more questions also from the audience after you answered this particular one from Maryam? What's your timing? Okay, so folks in the live chat now, please start populating your questions. Please put them in high caps. It's easier for me to bring up on the screen here for my guests. And while we're waiting for those to populate, back to you, Lindsey, to answer Maryam's question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that, well, it's probably 100% of the time that I have some suggestions, but they have come from your allies that I'm then offering you, and it's the best way to keep the benefits of the ceremony going, right? Because what I tell people is we went in, we did all this work, and nothing is permanent. And that may seem disheartening to some people or unfortunate to some people, but it's true of everything in the universe. That is just how things are, right? And so to keep something going, it's just like we say, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? You don't want to let it atrophy, and you don't want to let it go completely. And so to keep these energies as pure as they are after the ceremony and as good as they are after the ceremony, taking your allies' advice is really important. So I almost always have practices that are suggested for people. They're much more often than what Maryam got. They're much more sort of more standard sort of practices, like different, like forgiveness practice. It's a pretty standard thing that people do in various cultures in various ways. And so that's an example, I guess, of one of the more standard things. And then these custom sort of meditations or ceremonies are much less often suggested by your allies. And so when they are, I just take that as a huge honor and a blessing for you, Maryam, that is what came through for your allies. Again, this is a unique practice that you're the only one who's ever going to have exactly that, as far as I know.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, there's quite a few questions already coming up. The first one on the queue is, what's Lindsey's link again? Okay, it's rogueways.org/shop. And again, it's in the description below this video, but let me bring that link back down for you guys here as well in the live chat. So as you see it scroll by, just click on it and open the page in another window. Okay, the first question, it stems from the beginning of the show. Let's see if I can find it again. I believe it was from Siobhan. Yes. Have you worked with walk-ins? Have you found certain traits? And if so, which ones?
I have not, I think, worked with what people call walk-ins necessarily. And if I did, that didn't translate through this work. And so if so, I would say they have the same needs as everyone else. And it would just look like a normal ceremony to me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Ben, I believe, was next. Lindsey, please speak of self-sovereignty and entity attacks.
Yeah, what a good one. It's really important, like we said earlier, the part of those chains like that Maryam had and that a lot of us have, they're actually coming from some aspect of our self-agreement to them. And these are like the most pernicious things because we don't always want to admit the parts of ourselves that are not perfect and that we're maybe, still in negative beliefs about. For example, if I have a belief deep down in my subconscious that I'm not worthy, or I'm not capable of something, then even if everything else is in alignment, something could still go wrong because part of me is still agreeing I'm not worthy and I'm not capable. And so life is saying, okay, you're not then. And here's these problems in your way. And it's the same truth with spiritual interactions as well. If you know beyond a doubt that you're a sovereign soul, there's unshakable faith in that, and that nothing could convince you otherwise. There is no dark energy that could ever harm you, right? Because you know better. Like, you are very aware of your sovereignty, and you know that you actually have more power than they ever could. And just by saying, get out of my space, with no uncertain terms, they must obey. And it's true of our positive light allies as well as our the negative entities that are around us. And this is why it's important to understand what free will is really about, because that's what it boils down to as well. Knowing your worth and being sovereign in that, knowing your sovereignty, and exercising your free will are very important spiritual skills. And I think this is another reason why we've been so indoctrinated and dragged down into believing that we're worthless, or that we're, viruses on the planet, and that we're, only going to ever kill each other, and all of these negative things, is so that we have these self-limiting, belief systems installed deep within us.
It's evident by looking at the world. I mean, you just walk down the street and you could see who believes that they're a slave. Right? It's evident.
You mean like the people driving alone in their cars wearing diapers? Okay, I'm being facetious. Okay, not too much about that. We're gonna get yanked. What's the next question here? Biryani, I believe. Biryani J. Do you have any markings from any of your abductions? So you talked about implants earlier, but did you also have maybe some scars or anything else that would lead you to believe that there were maybe other things happening, whether with the MyLabs or with some of the benevolence?
Not that I know of. I don't know that I would have inspected my own body every day though. So there could have been things that I missed at the time. But other than that one sort of depression in my shoulder back here, I don't have anything that would be physical scarring or, left over from any of that.
Okay, very good. I've had a few experiencers on my show before, and some of them do have some almost identical markings, oddly enough. And
really?
Different actual words, different types of abductions. Yeah, I'd love to do more shows on that too, but they're still very heavily censored, and it creates a lot of drama here for some reason. So there's a lot of attacks on this particular subject for many reasons, and we don't need to get into this show. Sherry, question. I'm a soul tribe of 8. One of us is trying to get off of Xanax. We're getting attacked by entities through him while he is weak. Okay, so the person trying to get off Xanax here. So one of them, anyways. He seems controlled by it to me. Any suggestions there?
That's a rough one. Just like any drug, truly, it can be used as a portal for these entities. And especially when you're trying to get away from the drug, then it's much harder because they're realizing their portal is closing and they really want to keep it open. So
it's self-survival for them, right? They don't want to die. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so this is the hardest time. And it is where the most difficulty will come through this person. And it's really beautiful to have a tribe around you when this is happening to you. So what a lucky person to get to have that love and support. That's very rare. So if you're all standing in your sovereignty and, know your boundaries and can keep that up, and it's not draining you or, putting you in a situation where you would open your own cracks, so to speak, then what a beautiful, kind service to provide for that person, to keep boundaries with them, right? Again, if they start to slip and that thing starts to come through, you say, no, well, you don't treat me like this, and whatever might be influencing you is going to get out of my space now, which might mean they physically walk away from you, because who knows how deep the attachment is. But either way, you're keeping your boundaries and you're letting them know, and that's healthy for them as well. I know some people think I'm harsh sometimes, but I just really like good boundaries because I've seen what spiritual damage can occur when just the slightest boundary is allowed to be bypassed. Like, oh, it's just today, or oh, he's just feeling weak, or oh, that's exactly when they come through and then attack. The
slippery slope to hell.
Yep.
And you mentioned earlier about the sovereignty thing and speaking your boundaries. One thing that came to mind too is you have to speak them with authority. Not, oh, could you please don't cross that line, pretty please. No. When you're talking to these entities, you have to speak with authority and make it so. And understand that you only have to say it once. If you're in the trick of having to say it many, 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 many times to enforce it, no, you're not speaking loud enough or clearly enough. So speak with authority. Hopefully that helps you guys also. Let me bring this one here. It's an odd question. But I think we should address it. It's interesting to me. As a female YouTuber, I'm curious if people prefer Lindsey's natural, approachable looks as an authoritative voice, or Maryam's more sexualized look makes her more interesting.
I'm offended by that. I don't think I'm sexualized. I don't feel sexual. I'm offended by that. I don't wear makeup. What's sexual? Because I'm in a tank top. I'm in Miami.
One of my reaction to this when I thought it, I was like, well, what does looks have to do with anything? We're having a very esteemed conversation, but I thought maybe I'm missing something here between the lines. Lindsey, How would you address this?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm sure I just think everyone's attracted to a completely different thing, right? It's whatever works for you. So I have a lot of people ask me, like, how do I choose a teacher for this or that? Or how do I choose a healer for this or that? Or even if it's like a doctor or even if it's a hairstylist, I just say, well, you choose the person who seems most in line with what you are doing, right? And you're attracted naturally to those types of people anyway, I would hope. And then you can use your discernment to ask yourself, like, well, is this person a good role model, or is this person good at their job? And you can even, check in with your spiritual guidance and ask what your heart really feels about it, right? But I just say, if you're not looking at someone's life and saying, like, does that person seem to experience and portray and live what I would like to experience and portray and live? Like, does that person's energy match what I would like for myself? And if the answer is no, you shouldn't be following that person. So I think people kind of naturally do this. And so people who kind of like my energy will follow my channel, and people who like Maryam's energy will follow her. And that and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can follow both of us, right?
I think the reason I brought it up for me too, because it struck me, because for me, what this person is asking is beside the point. When I often watch or listen to new YouTubers, or people send me videos all the time, I usually don't look at the YouTube. I actually just close my eyes and I listen to the frequency. I listen to the pauses, the long pauses. I listen to the void and the frequency of the person speaking. And then I decide whether I like them or not, even before I see all the shiny lights on the screen. So anyways, interesting question. But, we're all coming to this and using discernments with different tools. And so I understand the question that for some people, they might be, how do I say this? Actually, I'm just going to let it go. I'll let it go for now. I think that's good. But thank you for the question. It felt like an honest question. So at any rate, let's move on. What's the significance of birthmarks, if any? Well, from a shamanic perspective, what are birthmarks?
Yeah, it seems like they're trauma marks from previous lives, right? Like, especially if there was violence done at that site. It's interesting because even if there's no birthmark, we see the energetic traces of these things anyways. I have a few birthmarks that I haven't yet connected to past lives, but I have other health issues that I have connected to past lives. And I've seen, specifically, I have this place in my right shoulder that just is the center of all problems in my back. I have a really exceptionally twisted and mangled spine and just all sorts of things. But there's this one spot in my right shoulder that's always been sort of the focal point. Well, in a past life, I was stabbed through a broken pool stick in that place, as well as other horrifying things I won't describe right now. And so I'm like, oh, that's where that is. And then when I started to notice, when does this act up and hurt? Then I started to notice it was connected to the trait which brought this attack upon me in that life. I was a really, really stuck up, controlling, narcissistic, horrible person. And so when I'm being sort of controlling and narcissistic in this life, it'll be especially bad right there. So it's really fascinating when you start to connect these things through lives and you start to see patterns. And I know Maryam has some experiences being not the best person in previous lives too. And you can see, even though we're not that person at all anymore, we have these little like spikes of it sometimes, right? And this is, again, our own sort of shadow and cracks that are best looked at deeply and healed fully.
If I can add to that when I was working after my near-death experience, I was hit by an SUV and dragged 50 feet across the cement and broke several bones. And I was working with someone at the time who was channeling my higher self. And we were doing a past life regression. And she said, look into the person's eyes. And I'm like, oh, it's me. I'm looking at me in a different life. And it was on a porch and I had just shot someone. And she's like, well, Maryam, you haven't always been a good person. And it was just like, wow. Oh yeah, of course not. I mean, I'm an old soul. So that realization that you've been a not so good person in a previous life and reckoning with that and how it's transferred into possibly your current life.
Very good. Lisa DiMartino, she's been following my channel since almost the beginning. She says, I don't think she meant anything negative by the question.
Sure. I have cobwebs down there, so I don't feel sexual at all, but thanks. Okay.
Wait, and I shaved my legs for this, Maryam? What are you talking about? Oh, but thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. And that's why I brought the question up to you, because, maybe it was maladroit in French, the way the question was posed, but I thought, it's food for thought. And you know me, I like to express everybody's opinion and share as long as they're polite. So thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Okay, next, I have two more questions on the screen. SM. What things is orgone used for? So on your website, you're selling some amazing orgone creations there. What are they used for?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because it's different according to almost everyone you talk to. But this is another thing that I was guided to provide and create for people. And my understanding comes from both, the understanding of what orgone actually is, and then also what my guides have guided me to create. And so what orgone actually is life force energy. When you say prana, you're talking about orgone. When you say chi, you're talking about orgone. When you say ether, you're talking about orgone. So we're looking at all of these energies that are the sort of substructure of all of life, right? Everything is orgone. Actually, you are orgone. We are orgone accumulators. Our intentions are orgone accumulators. And so, going way back to when orgone was termed and coined.
Did you say the word orgasm also as orgone? Because if you look at some of the work from Wilhelm Reich, that the word has an etymology into that framework as well.
What's the etymology of that orgone?
It is orgasm.
Orgasm. And that was coined by
orgasm
Wilhelm Reich in some of his work. And he was demonized for that. His books were burnt. He was put in jail. He's, of course, very crazy to talk about these crazy things. But when you get into some of these secret societies, they absolutely know it's not crazy. So again, maybe you can watch a little bit here, moving on that particular theme. Just the video doesn't get deleted, but do please keep going.
Yeah. So that energy that we all have and can produce at will, that is, according to him, it's layers of organic and inorganic material accumulate orgone more. So at the very base level, you could go out and create an orgone accumulator by laying down like a crystal and then putting some leaves on top of it and then putting a rock on top of that and then a board or something. That would be a really, rudimentary orgone accumulator. You can also make them really beautiful, like I've done. And you can make them wearable pendants. And usually I do 4 layers. So I do 2 organic, 2 inorganic layers. And then I also instill a blessing in each of them. And, this is one of the spiritual offerings I do. So if people want a blessing, they can get one. And every orgone piece I have is also embedded with a blessing for the person who receives it. So there's crystals. I use a lot of plant matter, and each of them have their own energy as well. So aside from just being a powerful orgone accumulator, it has specific intentions attached to it and specific energies attached to it through what types of crystals are in it, what types of plant matter are in it, and what types of metals are in it. So I do them rather affordably. I just started offering these rings. I had some of my fans ask me, they want to, get married soon. And they asked me if which it was an overwhelming honor. I was like, sure, I'll try. And they came out really nice. So I now offer rings for people if they would like an orgone ring. And I just think it's a powerful thing to carry around with you, again, for your own intentions to be enhanced and magnified by all the different energies that are within it, the blessing itself, and then the fact that it is an orgone accumulator. I have, however, a lot of people claim EMF protection. If you want to go on the route of literally everything is producing EMF, then yes. If you want to go the route of does it actually stop, synco geo waves or other things from coming into your body, I would not claim that. But because I haven't tested it and measured it and I don't know how. But I did have someone who bought some earrings. I make orgone earrings too. And they said they were out gardening and they just suddenly felt like something was coming, rushing at them from, whatever direction. And they stopped and tensed up because they felt like they were about to get hit with something. And they heard like a pinging sound, and one earring from that direction, the one on that side, cracked in half and fell apart.
Wow.
And if you look at orgone, the resin that I use is, I wouldn't be able to cut it with anything I own. I don't know how you would do that. So for it to just crack and fall apart is incredible. So, I mean, take that for what you will. I wouldn't, bank my money on it. Just again, like I said, I haven't tested it, but that was a pretty compelling experience that she had. And so I like to share that with people just in case it does protect against who knows what.
Well, I think also you just talked about how to measure that. It's very possible that in some cases, we don't yet have the tools to measure what some of these devices are doing. And I say that because I think it was Michael Tellinger. He was trying to measure the frequency in one of the sites in South Africa. It's called Adam's Calendar. And the devices that are available on the planet only go to a certain range of frequency. And this particular calendar was going way beyond that. And people were like, we can't even measure this. We don't have tools for this yet. So it's very possible that in the realm of Wilhelm Reich and his work, we still have, I think maybe in some of the darker projects or the military projects, they probably do have the tech to measure what we're talking about now. But for us, it would still be maybe fringe or more difficult to find. At any rate, if they feel good to you, that's all you need to know. So that's probably the big thing there. And I know for a fact, I do have a lot of Orgone pyramids here in my home. This is just one beautiful one.
Wow.
Here also. Yeah, and I'm designing one with Carla from Ascension Organites. We're doing a specific pyramid with the BeyondMystic logo look and feel. So we're working on that. So folks, stay tuned for that. Maybe by next month, we'll have our first draft for you guys. Oh, let me bring that up for the audience. There you go.
These are my newest favorite things that I've been creating, which are a lotus votive. So they're Orgone lotus votives, and they're beautiful. So
absolutely
I'm
amazing.
having a lot of fun with these.
Beautiful.
These are just a couple I had nearby.
Dr. Moda says, please post our site again, please. Again, it's in the description box below. But okay, let's do that again. It's roguewaves.org. You can go ahead and click on the shop page to get to all of these amazing products. Okay, I think that was it for the questions. Let me just see.
Can we show the cards that Lindsey pulled?
Yes, you pulled cards before the show here tonight. I think you had 3 cards. First, explain what deck you're using, because we have a lot of tarot people on my show, and I know you use a different deck. And 2, let's get into those 3 cards and how they pertain to tonight's energy.
Yeah, thank you. I use the Handel deck, and I have been using the Handel deck for over 20 years. It's the only deck I've ever used, and I've come to learn that it is a bit different than other decks, traditional decks. Just some of the numbers and things are changed around a little bit, so don't be angry if things aren't what you thought they were. It does use every major tradition throughout the world, so each suit has one tradition. So the spheres are from... It's really beautiful. The spears are from, India. The stones are Native American. The swords are Northern European, and the cups are Northern European, and the swords are Egyptian. And so it's really cool to have that embedded in it, as well as runes and the I Ching and all astrology, obviously, and just so much is in these cards are really rich. And so I love that about them. Yeah. They really helped me to develop my intuitive side more, because so many cards can mean so many things depending on where they're at and, what the intention is and all these things. And these cards are so rich that it's just kind of a lot easier to pull out the meaning for this specific person in this specific reading, and I just love them for that reason. But
for the audience members, this is how you pronounce. This is the correct one. Handel.
Yes.
How do you pronounce it?
Handel is what I say, but I know some people say Heindel.
Heindel.
Okay.
Yeah, and the story of him creating this is also its own beautiful journey. So people can get into that if they like. But I pulled these 3 cards just as with the intention that we see kind of this moment for everyone collectively and what's going on, or, where we're sort of headed a little as well. And so the first card that came up was the Venus of Willendorf, the Mother of Cups. So it's the Queen of Cups, the Queen in the Cup suit. And she's really obviously about nurturing in a major way, all of this abundance here, right? And that mothering energy we would hope is abundant and beautiful. And this is part of Venus of Willendorf's, attraction anyway, is that she just has unending abundance for anyone. It feels like that would come to her, right? And with a cup's energy, she's made of stone. And so there's like a long-standing abundance too. It's like, it's not just going to be fleeting like some of the cup's energy is. So I like this card a lot right now, because we're being reminded that we still do have this abundance. We still do have this nurturing, and that it's in the earth, right? The earth is where we get that nurturing and that love that's endless and that abundance that's endless. And right now it feels like we're going to possibly have a lot more supply chain issues and possibly not have as much abundance in some ways. But this is a reminder that, yes, we do. It just might look different, might feel different, but actually it is this really warm, beautiful, endless embrace of our true mother, right? And that we're always connected to that, and that that's where we're going to get our emotional and our otherwise abundance. So I thought that was a really beautiful reminder. And in conjunction with that, we got the Three of Stones, which is a card of work. And so the reminder here is that that doesn't just come automatically and fall in your lap necessarily. You do have to possibly work a little for it. And that is a heavy, dense energy here of this work. It's not like grueling slavery, but it's also like you might have to get your hands a little dirty, right? And in that, there's actually this opportunity. There's a bubble we can kind of see emerging from the background here. Yeah. And that bubble is reminding us that when we can apply ourselves and put in the work to create this abundance from the earth for ourselves, there's actually an opportunity there that's beyond what we expected. And that feels almost like this spiritual reconnection that a lot of us are going through, and understanding comes through the earth, literally. You know, when you're out there, if you're building a garden or a greenhouse or who knows what, putting your energy into the earth, you're getting back a lot more than just physical produce or whatever else it might be, beauty and whatnot. You're also getting this spiritual connection, and the earth is a powerful spiritual being and entity for us to connect with. So that's like an invitation, a reminder to all of us that that's there. We maybe want to go find it. And a lot of us feel like we don't have time, but I know when Maryam was saying it earlier about how she's kind of not doing a lot of practices lately, and there's just so much in flux. I remember this saying that is something like, you know, if you don't have an hour to spend outside, then you should spend 2. And
precisely, I love that. Yes,
I feel like a lot of us need that reminder right now, me included. So
yeah, really good.
And the final card is
no, go ahead.
Okay, the final card is our first and only major arcana card, and this is the card of alchemy. This is actually the card that's on the deck that you showed. This is on the cover art there.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where we're at, is this moment of alchemy. And things seem perfectly divided right now, right? Like we've got this fake race war, like we talked about. And we've even got the division amongst the falseness that's been happening. And it's very divisive, and all kinds of divisive, just completely divided, completely polarized energies that are really being pulled like extra taut right now. Yeah. But this is actually creating the sort of furnace, you know, the inferno that's going to completely purify and then draw back together the best of everything in the end into some more perfect union, right? And so this card is hard, because nobody likes to be burned down to their essence necessarily. That's kind of painful, right? To let go of all that isn't truly you. But that's really what's happening for all of us. And a lot's going to fall away in that. A lot is going to be destroyed and transformed. But in the end, what comes out is more pure and more beautiful than what we could have imagined. So it's a really hopeful card in that way, that, you know, you do, it is going to hurt. It is going to be a bit of hard work, but you do get something beyond what you can maybe imagine right now out of it at the end. We all do as a species.
The universal energies are supporting us here to get into authenticity, but that does mean, again, burning away all of those past programs that no longer serve us. And sometimes that's you're right, that's a lot of work. Somebody in the chat said, JC, your description box does not include the link, and you're right. So what happened, I'm bringing up a screenshot here. I see it, but because we went live when I changed it, it hasn't yet saved to you guys. So it will right after the show. You'll see the link, and if I scroll down there, you'll see the links for Maryam's documentary and her website as well, Honey Colony. So I do apologize for that. That's my bad.
That's Mercury.
So many windows open at the same time. Okay, there was one last question. If we have time, I want to go back to that, and then we'll ask Lindsey how we can reach her, how we can book these sessions with you, and then we'll go back to Maryam to talk about some of the different projects she's working on now and how you guys can support Maryam as well, and we'll end the show on that. So let's get to this last question. Gina Browning, she was asking, can you see? Wait, this one here. Did that work? Yes. I was beaten and smothered until I lost consciousness about 2 years ago, nearly killed. Would a session help me figure out why?
I'm very sorry that happened to you. I experienced a similar thing in my life. And it's really terrifying to lose complete control like that at the hands of someone who is obviously trying to harm you. And so I'm sorry for that trauma. A session will definitely help something. It might provide answers to why. It's more likely to provide healing from the trauma itself. And possibly sometimes it does offer solutions to why in the form of past life understandings. So like I said, I can't ever promise, because what I do is I go into that ceremonial space and I ask, what should we do? What are we doing here? Like, what is best going to serve your soul? And so it's likely, though, and it's common, that a past life will come up that will really illustrate the pattern that is continuing to this life. And that's very helpful, because when you heal that pattern, that type of thing is never going to happen to you again. So that is really helpful.
Very good. And what type of sessions here, because you have different offerings, what type of sessions would you recommend, Gina, here on your site?
The ceremony, the healing ceremony and session is what I call it. I think it's that one that you have with
this one here?
Yeah, with the, yep. That's what I did for Maryam, and that's what I would suggest if someone wants, similar to what Maryam experienced and described, where I do go into that ceremonial space and find your allies, and we do some healing, and sometimes there's some past life information, and sometimes there's soul retrieval, and there's often entity detachment, and then there's often, these suggestions of how to continue on your own to integrate and to, continue that path of healing.
So is it like a clearing?
It usually involves clearing, yes.
Okay. And for the folks who want to do a little bit more of their own shadow work, get started and really hit the ground running, what's this program here? Brighter You, 6-week soul purpose course. Explain that one.
Yeah, this is where the goal is to teach anyone who comes their true power. People always say things like, oh, I wish that I had these experiences, or I wish I was gifted, or what. Well, you are. All of us are, actually. And so if you feel specifically called, but you just haven't found your route yet, this might be for you. Some people are drawn to very specific modalities, like, well, I want to do Reiki, or I want to learn to do this or that. And this is much more about teaching you how to widen your spiritual channel and to be spiritually uplifted and to practice different things that are going to give you the ability to continue to heal, do your own shadow work, continue to bring out your gifts, and eventually offer them to other people, just like I do, if that is what you're called to do. And so the goal is that you can take this course and then you never need me again, because you already know everything you can do on your own to keep yourself moving indefinitely down a spiritual path of service to others in alignment with your own spiritual skill and gifts. So that is the goal. And so far, that is what people experience. And it's really, really beautiful and fun. I enjoy doing that so much.
That's awesome. Cecilia24 is saying, all her sessions look so healing. I want to try them all. Well, yes, you can try them all, one after the other. Oh, and Gina was asking, hey, which one? And we just answered that. So it was this healing ceremony session here at the amazing 222 numerology. Okay. And for folks who want to learn more about your work and what you do, what do you have coming up next here on your Rockfin channel? Let me bring that down to the live chat as well.
Yeah, actually, I was supposed to just release a video tonight where I interviewed Quite Frankly. He's a really cool, down-to-earth. He has his own channel. So that's coming out tonight. I was supposed to have Dr. Andrew Kaufman on Sunday, but we had a mix-up today with our times, and so that is not going to be happening. We're going to meet again in March instead. And he's been on the channel a number of times, but it's been so long because he just skyrocketed into the world scene and brought us such beautiful understandings. And so that will happen, but not this Sunday. And then I generally do a couple interviews a week with various people on various subjects. And then on Thursdays I do Middle Path, which is a sort of much less immersive, Brighter You course, right? I generally, we do a practice or two, and then we just dive into some aspect of spiritual, thinking or tradition or experience or anything else. And so it's like a little mini class, and we do that on Thursdays, and that's
so they can dip their toes there and see how they feel about actually engaging into the actual classwork and courses. Okay,
yeah,
well, that's a good way to get them started. I love it.
And I do guided meditations twice a week for anyone who wants to just be more consistently and regularly meditating. And those are all soul guided, they're source inspired. And so I sit down right before we do the meditation and I allow, source or my allies to tell me what would be best for everyone that day. And so they're usually all unique.
Is that on, how do you do it, on Zoom? I don't want to sit on a guided meditation.
Yeah, it's on Zoom.
Is it by donation?
It's actually one of the products you can buy in the shop. It's called monthly meditation membership, I believe. And whatever you join, you get a month from that point. And so we do 2 meditations a week, and I just send the link out right before we meditate on Sundays and Thursdays. And then you just click into the Zoom and you can join us live if you can, but if you can't, they're recorded. And so I just send them out right afterwards and you can watch them whenever you need to.
Soul guided meditations, is this it? Renewal of uplift night? Okay. Jenny in the chat earlier, she's one of our moderators. She said that your weekly meditations absolutely rock. So you got a testimonial there already from people who know you in the chat. Awesome. Fantastic. And I love your artwork of all your posters on your videos here. Absolutely unique in many, many ways.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Maryam, how about you? What's coming up next? How can we support you? What projects are you working on now? I did find the link to that viral video, and I have another one here for high profile cases.
I wanted to show the exhibit. So I just interviewed Alex Meyer of Children's Health Defense, and you could find that interview. We talk about EUAs and Comiranati, and she works with RFK. Anybody who follows my work knows that my main coverage is on medical freedom, and I've been covering that way before the Rona since 2012. And I just interviewed Dr. Vladimir Zelenko yesterday. That will come out probably next week. I also have an upcoming interview. I sell Viome, which is a gut intelligence test where they take your poop and your blood and can give you specific superfoods and foods to avoid. There's, the microbiome is quite fascinating. We make most of our serotonin in our gut. For people who don't know, I am a functional medicine consultant and coach through the Institute of Functional Medicine. And I just turned 49. And as you can see, I definitely look 49, right? And I've reversed lupus. And I've been hit by an SUV and dragged 50 feet across the cement and learned how to walk again. And when you show the viral video, that's mostly what people wanted to know. How did you cure lupus? And how did you reverse it? And I work with people. There was tons of people that came. I do a mini consult. So now I have a backup of people that I'm working with. Yeah, you can see. Are you going to show that now?
Well, I'm just playing in the background while you're talking, but yes, and I'll bring the link down.
You can show it, and then I'll talk about.
Yeah. Let me bring the link down.
And I'll laugh at my expense.
All right, Maryam, you just mentioned here the functional medicine. So I wanted to bring that up on the screen. Also, guys, if you go to honeycolony.com, you can find a link there to get a session with Maryam. There's different types of sessions there when you click on this.
And I saw a lot of. I think Jenny was talking about Nourish. Yes, a little goes a long way. That's the ozonated cream that I created, and it has jojoba and beeswax and bee pollen and ozone, and one of them has patchouli for those dirty hippies out there. So yeah, that's Honey Colony, and there's also simplytransformative.com.
Somebody called bullshit. It's like, there's no way she's 40.
49, dude. 49. 40.
Well, he said bullshit 39, so there you go. That's Jim Montgomery.
A sexualized 49.
Yeah, you're all sexualized with the cobwebs.
So,
Love that. Okay, and the court case, what was this one about? You sent me another link.
Okay, so if you scroll all the way down, this just came out. Okay, so if anyone is donating, understand that I am under attack. And I feel a lot. There was a comment like life, you could be a lot happier. I feel stuff. Who says, I'm not saying life is so hard for me. I feel things. I'm very blessed. So let's go down. Sorry.
All the way to the bottom?
Yes, right there. No, just this is what I'm purchasing. So I'm working on a documentary, and these are all the exhibits that have just come out. So videos. Oh, look, like Chauvin's BWC. Anyone that followed Derek Chauvin's body-worn camera fell off. And I was like, well, it's still on. So this is some of the goodies that I will get in I'm excited in my book that is 2/3 and my documentary. So that's what your donation will go to.
So guys, you can help Maryam. Oh, I'm no longer on the camera there. Eh? So guys, you can help
and
Maryam
when I write
here
for
on her
activist
Venmo.
post, or when I write for Vaxter does pay me a little activist post, which I have tons of excellent articles. I don't get paid anything for it. Makeup artist gets tons of money to put toxic shit on someone's face. Journalist doesn't get anything anymore.
Jerome says, I'm only 21 again. Yes, 21 at heart. Me too. I love you, Jerome. That's amazing. Okay, so folks, again, here you can support our friend Maryam here on her Venmo tip jar.
Thank you.
Link back down into the live chat as well. And if you want to follow along with her on a daily basis and follow along the busy bee that Maryam is, you can find her here at BLady17 on Twitter. That's her new handle. And you can also find her on Gab. And finally, you can find her at honeycolony.com. And sometimes on YouTube, when she's not in jail, you can also find her at Maryam.
Yeah, like I interviewed Christopher Key. I almost got arrested with him at the Miami University serving people, because someone has to do this work and I will do it. So yeah, served people. We served them the Nuremberg Code. We served them David Martin's dossier, and we served them the VAERS numbers. We went to 2 pharmacies. One of the pharmacists literally looked at the papers and threw it in the trash. I mean, he just glanced. He didn't look at them. And the other pharmacist was Egyptian, and I started speaking to her in Arabic, and she was horrified. She had never heard of the VAERS number. And I personally think what Christopher Keys is doing, actually going to serve pharmacies and going to serve people, is brilliant.
Absolutely.
I asked him if he would be my sensei, because he's very calm and I lose my crap. I lose my shit and get very emotional.
And if you want to see an emotional Maryam Henein, go check out that Instagram video.
Oh, you're not going to show it? Okay.
Well, we might have troubles with some of the words in there, Maryam.
Oh.
I think that's what the other one.
YouTube. I mean, yeah, okay.
I didn't write. I'll bring that link back down for the guys here in the chat. Folks, we're running out of time. This was the amazing Maryam Henein and Lindsey Sharman here for the Quantum Woo. I'm so impressed with both of you. What a great show this was. Thank you so much, Lindsey, and thank you so much, Maryam. I love you to death. And please, folks, go and support these amazing people above me here, both of them. One of them you can find at rogueways.org, and the other one, of course, at honeycolony.com. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe here at Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic 3, my third channel. We're at 61,000, almost at 62,000 awesome. And growing.
They won't let me go beyond 3,400.
I know, it's a curse.
My second YouTube channel.
I know. So guys, join us tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern for the Wacky Woo with my friend JSnib4. And I think it's going to get really, really wacky. So some of you guys know what that means. So join us tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern. And again, this was the Quantum Woo with Maryam Henein and Lindsey Sharman at Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.